All right, so let's jump right into what is, I think, one of the most explosive first books in the entire history of philosophy. We're talking about Friedrich Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy. And look, this is not some dry, stuffy academic text. Not at all. It is the fiery, passionate cry of a young genius who was wrestling with a huge fundamental paradox. How in the world do you find meaning? How do you create it in a life that's just filled with suffering? And years after he wrote it, Nietzsche himself looked back on this book. He kind of admitted it was a bit rough around the edges, full of youth's metal and youth's melancholy, as he put it. He saw its flaws for sure, but he also recognized its defiant, unapologetic spirit. And that's exactly where we need to start, with the brilliant, and I mean brilliant, young man who dared to ask where our art and maybe even our strength really comes from. So, the young professor's problem. Really, how can a world full of suffering create beautiful art? To get this book, you first have to get the guy who wrote it. And I need you to just erase that image you probably have in your head of the old, grim, mustachioed Nietzsche. That's not who we're talking about. We're talking about a ridiculously brilliant classical scholar who became a full professor at the absolutely mind-blowing age of 24. 24. I mean, this guy was a true prodigy. He had this robust, healthy childhood, but was raised with a kind of Spartan severity that really pushed him. He went to this elite school called Forta and just crushed it. On top of that, he was an exceptional musician. So good, in fact, that he almost made a career out of it. And while he's still a university student, he's already getting scholarly articles published. I mean, who does that? It's no wonder he was appointed a full professor at the University of Bale at just 24 years old. So this is who we're dealing with, a vibrant, powerful young man who was just obsessed with this deep, profound contradiction he saw in the ancient Greeks. And this was the central question that absolutely haunted him. How could these people, the ancient Greeks, who knew, really knew, that life was full of misery and randomness, how could they create the most beautiful, life-affirming art the world had ever seen? They weren't naive. They weren't looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. They looked suffering and chaos straight in the eye. They knew the score. So how? How did they not just crumble into despair? How did they end up creating a culture of such incredible beauty and light? Just listen to this piece of ancient folk wisdom they had, something called the Wisdom of Silenus. It basically says, what is best of all is forever beyond your reach, not to be born. The second best for you, however, is soon to die. Wow, talk about bleak, right? It's this incredibly pessimistic view of the world. And yet, this is the same culture that gave us the glorious, shining Olympian gods. They weren't hiding from the darkness. They were staring right into it. Nietzsche was convinced he had to understand how they managed to transform that sheer terror into something beautiful. So we get to his big idea, the two gods of art, this duality that he thought exists within all of us. He believed he found the answer. And it wasn't some single, simple explanation. No, he said it was all about the dynamic, creative tension, a kind of beautiful struggle between two totally opposing artistic forces. And to explain them, he named them after a couple of Greek gods who perfectly represented these primal drives. Drives that he said are not just in art, but inside every single one of us. Okay, so first up, you've got the Apollonian. This is named after Apollo, the god of light, reason, and order. This is our impulse to create structure, to make sense of things, to create beautiful illusions. Think about dreams, how they have a kind of logic, even when they're weird. Think about sculpture with its clean lines and definite form. And here's the really crucial part. The Apollonian is the force that creates the very idea of you as an individual, a single, stable person separate from all the chaos out there. And then you've got its polar opposite, the Dionysian. This one's named after Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, and chaos. This is that wild urge to just shatter all the rules, to break down all the boundaries. It's the feeling of losing yourself, whether through intoxication or just pure ecstasy, and merging back into this raw, primal, untamed energy of life itself. It's this incredible, joyful destruction of the individual. And Nietzsche said its purest form is music. So you can see the clash right here, right? The Apollonian is all about the dream. The Dionysian is intoxication. It's order versus chaos. It's you, the individual, versus this feeling of primal unity with everything. Sculpture versus music. Light versus darkness. For Nietzsche, this wasn't just some abstract theory about art. No way. This is the fundamental tug-of-war of life itself. A struggle that's playing out inside every single one of us all the time. So, the big question is, how do you resolve this conflict? Do you just pick one? Well, for Nietzsche, the absolute pinnacle, the highest point art ever reached, was ancient Greek tragedy. And why was it so perfect? Because it didn't choose a side. It did something miraculous. It took these two warring gods, these two opposing forces, and smashed them together, forcing them into this perfect, powerful, breathtaking union. And she saw its birth as this incredible three-step dance. So first, you have the foundation. It's the Dionysian chorus on stage, singing, dancing, just embodying this raw, chaotic, musical energy of existence, all its pain and all its ecstasy wrapped together. Then, step two, out of that pure musical chaos, an Apollonian dream image crystallizes. A hero appears, a story, clear, structured dialogue. And finally, the union. As an audience member, you watch the individual hero get crushed by fate, but at the same time, because of that Dionysian music pulsing underneath it all, you feel this joyful, almost cosmic unity with all of life, a life that just keeps going, no matter what happens to one person. And that's the absolute magic of it, right there. Greek tragedy forces us to look straight into the abyss. It makes us witness what he calls the eternal primordial pain, the sole basis of the world. It's that same terrifying truth that Silenus was talking about. You can't look away. But, and this is the absolute genius of the whole thing, it then redeems us. At the very same moment you're staring into that darkness, tragedy gives you this vision-like new world of appearances, this beautiful Apollonian dream that floats on top of it all. It's this illusion that makes the suffering not just something you can bear, but something that actually feels beautiful. It redeems the horror. And this right here, this is the beginning of a whole philosophical journey. This gets us to the absolute core of the book. You have to understand, for Nietzsche, this whole idea wasn't just some clever analysis of ancient Greek plays. No, this became the cornerstone for everything he would write later. This was the launchpad for his entire life's work, a project that would end up challenging the very foundations of Western civilization. And it all boils down to this one stunning and honestly pretty radical sentence. The existence of the world is justified only as an aesthetic phenomenon. Let that sink in. What he's saying is that art isn't just a nice hobby, it's not just decoration for your walls. For the young Nietzsche, it is the only thing that makes life worth living. In a world that has no built-in meaning, a world that's just brimming with suffering, the only way we can justify it all is by turning it into art, by taking that pain and creating something beautiful out of it. That's how existence becomes not just bearable, but something we can say yes to. So, is the existence of the world really justified only as an aesthetic phenomenon? I mean, that leaves us with a pretty powerful and provocative question to chew on, doesn't it? Can beauty really save us from the terror of the truth? Can a great song, or a powerful play, or a beautiful painting, can it truly justify a world that contains so much suffering? It's the question Nietzsche would spend the rest of his life trying to answer, and the whole incredible journey started right here, in this fiery, unforgettable book from when he was just a young man.